Hello, this is Max Drake. I want to talk about this video I did yesterday. It was all based around the GlideApps new map feature where you can press on the location button and it gives your current location and you can push that to a sheet. So once you've got it in a sheet, you can use it. I got a comment from Cabo 17 which says, "Hello, I need to create an application that can show in real time the location of the garbage car in my city, showing the routes to be collected. This is the project for the technology fair in my city." So I thought, well, actually, that's quite an interesting little dilemma. So I wrote some blurb back about how in Wellington you'd use a GPS locator, you push to a server, you'd then have some sort of API that would link to an app that would then pull down. And the reason you'd use an API is just so that you get a limited amount of information coming back from that. So you push the stuff up from the truck and you pull it down. And then I started to think, how would you do it in GlideApps? And to a certain extent here, he's suddenly saying, well, showing the routes to be collected. Well, why do you need the routes? So anyway, I've just built a route. So I used Google Earth and I actually just did a polyline and actually just did a route. And that sort of started to get me to think about garbage things. What is the most efficient route that you actually take through a suburb or through a city to actually do the rubbish cleaning, to actually gather it all up? And so I actually just suddenly thought, I don't want to go into all of that. All I want to do is just look at a specific route and how you can do things. So there's a few issues coming through here straight away. What I can do is if I turn on my sensor as a user and I'm in this building here and I say, oh, well, where's the garbage truck? It's here. So is this the distance that I've got to wait? So I say, oh, well, it's 7 o'clock and he's only a couple of minutes away. And this is the closest distance be. But in fact, the truck's got to go down all the way through all of this and pick up all the rubbish before they get to me. Now, another thing is, with this, is I'm here. Now, am I associated with this street? Am I associated with this street? Am I associated with this street or this street? I'm associated with where I put my rubbish out. So that's normally the front door. So if this is the front door of the building, this is where I'm putting my rubbish out. And I'm just using this as a notional thing. I could be this one here. So if I'm notionally putting my rubbish out here, what I need to know is, when does the truck pass this point here? If I'm putting my rubbish out here, I want to know, when does it pass this point here? So as long as I get my rubbish out before it passes this point, I'm good to go. So that's all I need to know from my indication point of view. Now, how do I know when it's going to pass here? Well, when the truck comes in at this point in time, and let's just say this is start point here, if they can give a start point, they know the average speed of what they take going through all of the route. We know the distance between all of these points here. So we got an average speed. So this is actually just saying that we're going on a linear process. We can actually work out, if we've got a start time, when they will actually be arriving at this point in time here. So this is the thinking that I started to do. Now, this was another thing that I got quite caught up with very early on. If my GPS is actually saying I'm at this point here, now how do I calculate whether I'm between this point and this point, or this point and this point and this point? Because they're all so close together, I could actually be, because this is directional, this point here and this point here, my lat may be closer to this one, but my longitude may be closer to this one. So it gets a bit confusing. So trying to define that sort of thing gets really messy. Then trying to calculate all of the distances between all of these ones here, working on the lat long, because if you work on a lat long and you subtract another lat long, you're getting a sort of a degree of arc across the Earth's surface. So you've then got to convert that from whatever that is, doodahs, into either meters or miles or whatever you're actually thinking about. So it can be quite messy, all of these things here. So You kind of say, I know your route. Now, the other thing is you don't really need to turn your location on as a user because you know where your front door is. You know the rubbish truck normally comes and it goes and picks it up. So all you need to do is know when they come from the point before. That's all you need to know. So all I need to do is tell you the time of when the truck is coming down through here. And that can be based on when I start the point here. So you don't actually need to know where the truck is in real time. It's not relevant. It really isn't. So having that as a time. So we've got some constraints. GlideApps have got two things. They've got a little blue buzzy marker, which is for where I'm located. And then, but if you've got a truck, wherever the truck is, it's going to be the same coloured marker as all the other ones because that's how it is at this point in time. Now, I'm sure they'll end up with coloured markers and all sorts of things later on. At this point in time, that's what it is. Now, where they are in real time is when they press the button to say show my location, and unless they've got something on an interval, which is a repeater, like update me every 30 seconds, in which case every time the user updates, that's refreshed to the point when that information from the truck was pushed to the Google Sheets. So the latest one in the Google Sheets is the latest one that will be pulled through here. So there's a few complicated things about doing timing and where the actual truck is and do I actually need that truck event. On one reflection, you don't. You can actually do this quite easily just by having the rate of speed and just saying where your pin's in. And you know that you're between pin 6 and 7 or between pins 7 and 8. So all you need to know is that pin. So as a user, you don't need that much information. You know, you can suddenly thinking, have they got to this point here yet, or have they got to another point? But all you need to know is the pin before you. And so when we go and look through this, we've got a whole load of the points, the user points coming down through here of all of these junctions. So I've just used the junctions as node points because that's where they change direction. So I need to measure out the difference between this lat long and this lat long and what's the distance in between. Now that was complicated to do, and being a lazy person that I am, I just went into Google Earth and I just used the measure command. And I did the polyline here to show the whole distance of the whole route that I've taken. And then I'm just using line through here. Why is that blowed out there? Okay, that's on. So I can actually go into here. So all I need to do in line is actually just click from there to there. And it gives me a notional distance is of 334 meters. In between there. So I've got my distance now through there. So the second thing is how fast does a truck go? Well, we can just make any assumptions we want, but it sort of intrigued me a bit. So I actually did a little bit of research on that. And I found this one on Quora, which was what is the assumed walking speed in Google Maps time estimates. And I thought that was an interesting place to start. And what it seems to be is for about 2.7, somebody's done a whole load of pins on the thing and worked out that for the shorter walks, you end up with about 20 minutes a mile. So you you divide that by 1.6. So there's 1.6 kilometres in a mile. So it ends up being about 12 and a half minutes a kilometre. Or something like that. Yep. So that was the one there. And then he said on long walks, look, we got 251 miles and it only takes 15 minutes. Well, that's rubbish. Because I did a Camino, a couple of things on this one. One, I did a Camino, which was across the north of Spain, which was a pilgrimage, and it was walking for 30 days. And on average, we were walking about 3.5. So the 20 minutes a mile usually works out at about 5 kilometres an hour. We were actually only walking 3.5 kilometres an hour when you actually just look at your start time and your end time, because you stop for toilet breaks, you stop for a cup of coffee, you stop for lunch, you stop for a whole load of things. So on average, the longer distances you go, the slower it's going to be. And 250 miles, you're doing 40 kilometres, so let's say 30 miles in a day. So what about sleeping and doing that? You're walking like a zombie after that, all of that period of time. So it's a bit silly, some of those estimates through there. But conceptually, you kind of see where it's going and you can adjust accordingly. But how fast does the truck go? So anyway, I thought about this and I thought about that route and I just imagined, we're driving a truck through there and doing all of that. And I said, about half an hour. and which I thought was a reasonable time. So I kind of looked at some numbers. I said, oh, it's gone 3,000 meters in that time, so 3 kilometers. And I kind of tried 2, or I tried 1, or I tried 4 or 5. And I thought 3 seems to be about a sensible thing. So when I actually looked at the different distances between the pins, between pin 1 and pin 2, it's 151 meters, and then between pin 2 and pin 3, it was 226 meters. Between pin 2 and pin 3, and whatever. So I can actually work out, if I did the overall total distance of that was 1.9 kilometers, then divided that by 3,000, it takes 0.6 of an hour to do all of that. So when we work out what 0.6 of an hour, or 0.6 of an hour times 60, is 37 minutes. So it takes me 37 minutes to do 1.89. So therefore I can actually multiply that, or divide that by that, and multiply by that, and I get it's taking me 3 minutes to do go between pin 1 and pin 2. It's taking me 4 minutes to go between pin 2 and pin 3. It's taking me 6 minutes to go between pin 3 and pin 4, etc., etc., etc. And then I'm doing it cumulative so that I can actually get the additional ones coming through. So between pin 1 and pin 4, it's taking me 13 or 14 minutes. So if I know my start time, I can actually just start adding all these cumulative ones up, and so I know where I'm going to be at a specific point in time. So over time, I'm just adjusting to that. So in GlideApps, we can actually do this. We can actually make this app that all I have to do is say, when did I start? And I started at 8:23, or let's just say, I'm going to have an early start, and I'm going to start at 7:20. 5. We'll start at 7:31. Now, as soon as I enter that in, and we go back and look at the sheets when it starts, it just adjusts them accordingly. So what you can do is, at certain points of time, obviously they're not just doing this very small circuit through here, they're then going to have another circuit and another circuit, another circuit, and they'll have so many circuits before they get filled. Then they'll go off and do their bin, then they'll empty it at the landfill, then they'll come back and do another lot. So we can actually put some adjustment times in the truck, and suddenly say, in the truck we can say, this is when the start time is, and then after going through item number 10, we can adjust our time accordingly. So if we end up starting, so we finish those ones at 8 or something like that, so we can actually say, oh, we're going to stop for a tea break, so we're going to start at 9:31. So at the next point in time, anything after that automatically adjusts going the way through there. Oh, sorry, I think that's coming through at the same time. So I'd actually have to put it into a different setting or somewhere. So that's how we can do that. Now, the other thing as well with this, if we go to the next level of basically, I've got the truck, I've got the truck location that we've got. Now that you'd automatically do, but I just put some dummy numbers in there just to test it out. If I go into the users, the last one is where the user location is, and you can actually have that user location that you can push in if you wanted to do that. And again, it's every week you're doing it, so you wouldn't be pushing your location as you know where you live. So again, you wouldn't need that. So all I need to do is know where the pin is, what particular pin is, where that pin is, and what time it's going to be there, and I can adjust that. And then maybe the next one I go and do an adjustment through there. So the other thing that you can actually look at with this is, now this gives, the only thing that I've actually got the tool in here for that is to get, I've got date or I've got date time. I have got time. So that's all right. We just work on date time. And what we can actually do when we push that date time into there, we can then break out, the what's happened there? That was equal to date value, and then that item there. So I can get the date value on one, and I can get the time value on the other. So all I'm doing is just stripping the date out and then just giving me the time that I can actually play with. Now the date value through here, you might want to convert into a day of the week, because you may want a tab for each user's. You might have the people who get their rubbish cleared on Monday. You might have it because there'd be different routes. So you'll have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday app. So people, depending on which part of the area their pickup is, you give them one based on their normal date, because that's when you go and do that pickup. And then if there's a bank holiday and things, you'd have to think about how to actually adjust them. Whether you do it, you just shift it through to the next day, and you can push some information through in the app, so giving an update on what you're going to do on a specific date. But from the point of view, they're all linking through to the same app, so you can have different tabs for different user ones, and you'd make a different tab for each user with a different map going through. Or they can be in the same day but different hours. So people are done in the morning and people are done in the afternoons, just to kind of simplify the app as to where those relevancies come through. And you would actually have a help page through here with these sorts of images on them, so that they can see which points they actually land on and which ones are relevant through to them. And they can give updates. So you can give real-time updates on something like that, or reasonably good. You know, how critical do you have to be? You've got to take your rubbish out some day of the week. And you're not doing it by the millisecond, you're doing it by as long as you're within an hour or something like that. So I think that's a process that you could actually do. The app at the end ends up being quite simple. You could do some quite complicated calculations with these pins and something like that to do the degrees to get them more accurately. The other thing through here is you might actually have a narrow street where you go a lot more slower than between 2 points or between 2 junction points. So you can tweak these numbers to what is actually happening in real time. Now, obviously, if you get to, you've done this part of the cycle, but you're a bit late, you can actually go and update the other ones and suddenly saying, well, we're starting a bit later, so then we could go and do the updates, or you've got through them a lot quicker, in which case you go off for a tea break somewhere. But you can actually come through and do a stop-start thing as to come through and update as you go through. So I found that quite an interesting exercise to do. I thought it was quite fun. So within the few criteria, the date time that we've got here and the pin and the apps, you know, we can actually meet this person's requirements. How can we show real-time location of the garbage car? Don't care. We just want to know when it's at what time is it going to arrive at the pin before or the junction before. We can have our rubbish out. That's more than adequate. If I had that amount of information for my rubbish truck, that would be good. Now, another thing that actually happens in my particular situation, and I saw it referenced in this particular one that I saw on analytics for doing stuff, was you might have 3. We actually have 2. We actually have one for rubbish, and we actually have one for recycling. And then every second week, so 1 week it's recycling paper, the next week is recycling bottles. So there's these 2 points at which you've got to switch over through there. So most probably the users... and they're 2 different trucks. Like the one that comes and does the bottles is not the one that actually takes the rubbish, and the one that does the paper is another one again. I think, no, possibly the one that does the rubbish also has a compartment for the recycling paper, but the one that does the bottle is definitely another one. So you might need a double app or 2 pages on the same app for giving updates on which particular part of the cycling to the, if you have those level of things. So again, GlideApp meets the requirements of that. I'll give a link to this particular article because I thought it was quite an interesting one of just notionally how long they expect. Because you always wonder, you know, like you go into a park or something and it says, oh, that's an hour walk, and you end up taking an hour and a half, and you're suddenly thinking, how could it be an hour walk? Somebody must have been sprinting that. So it's sort of like, what are the walking distances, you know, and I always think in parks and things like that, they should say, you know, it's an hour walk at 5 kilometres an hour. You can suddenly think, well, I know I walk at a slower pace than that. I walk at 4 kilometres an hour. So you can suddenly adjust those timing things. So it's nice to see somewhere, this is somebody who's just gone through and done a little bit of analysis on their own, but it's nice to see some of those embedded assumptions that are actually made through that. Anyway, I hope that's been of interest to you. If you found the video useful, can you give a thumbs up? If not, ot panyaha. I do have a Patreon page, and I'd appreciate it if people support me, because I'd really like to get myself another hunt. Thank you very much. And again, well done, GlideApps, brilliant.